First of all, what's your understanding of the situation at the moment in Iran?
Nadia, as you just mentioned, the death toll is very much on the rise inside the Islamic Republic. According to the country's health ministry, 149 people died over the past 24 hours alone. They're actually saying that 50 people are contracting COVID-19 every single hour, amongst them high-ranking officials, parliamentarians. Some of them have actually lost their lives to the virus. And as a result of this, many observers are saying that Iran has now become the epicenter of this pandemic inside the region. There's also a lot of fear. Let me give you some examples. Now, in Iran, over 110,000 people are actually those that survived the chemical attacks conducted during the Iran-Iraq war during the 1980s. So they have respiratory problems. So they're a very vulnerable group of society. You also have a country that's extremely polluted. Around 30,000 people lose their lives to pollution each year alone. Again, a lot of lung diseases. People are scared. Now, the timing of this is also very frightening, and it's pivotal. Today is the Eve of Nowruz. That's the Persian New Year inside Iran. It's a time when many families and friends gather. There's a lot of traveling, a great deal of physical contact. So there is fear that the pandemic could be exacerbated by all of this if people aren't being very cautious. Now, moving away from the health issues, you have the economic problems to contend with. That was very much on the agenda prior to the crisis breaking out inside Iran. You have a plethora of US sanctions. You've got mismanagement, corruption. You have the drop in the price of oil, which is actually a global issue. And as a result of this, various Iranian officials, including the country's president, Hassan Rouhani, have called for help from the International Monetary Fund, $5 billion. Now, just to give you an example, a tiny nation like Qatar has injected 20 billion. Imagine what Iran actually needs. But there may be political pushback because there are concerns that Iran would use this money to fund the activities of the Revolutionary Guards and the Al-Quds force across the region. So for the time being, no funding is to be seen to be trickling to the Islamic Republic.
And Sanam, you've been in touch with plenty of people inside Iran in the past couple of weeks. What have people there been telling you about how they're feeling in the situation there?
Nadia, some people are unaffected, but for some, there's a real gloomy sense. As I mentioned, it's Nowruz, it's the Persian New Year. One young man, Amir Ali, in Tehran said that in the northern parts of the city, the capital, which is a more affluent area, a lot of people are actually reverting to self-isolating because there's no official lockdown like the one we're experiencing here in France. Now, another young woman said, thank goodness for VPNs because they can now circumvent the bans on certain websites and social media outlets like YouTube and Facebook and entertain themselves. However, and this is something that's very much a global issue, for many who have independent businesses, shops, restaurants, freelancers, there is a loss of income. One young man said, I hope that by the time the clock strikes 7:30 a.m., that's the Persian New Year, we'll all wake up from this nightmare. Lastly, one woman, and this is a sad story, wrote to me saying her father's passed away and she can't even bury him. And what I'm afraid about is that we'll hear more of these very painful accounts, given that one survey says by the time the pandemic is over in Iran, around 3.5 million people could have lost their lives.
All right, Sanam, Shantyaei reporting for us here in Paris on what is clearly a very critical situation in Iran. Thank you very much indeed.